Look, a teenager, ripped from everything he had ever known, is handed a new name, a new language, and a new God. And he had two choices: bow or break. Most people assume he survived Babylon because he was strong. But the real reason will completely change how you read the story. It is 606 BC. Jerusalem is burning, not because God had abandoned his people, but because his people had abandoned him. For generations, Israel had chased foreign gods, defiled the temple, ignored the prophets. And now the bill had come due. Jeremiah had warned them. Isaiah had warned them. But the warnings went unheard. And now the most powerful empire on the face of the earth was marching through their gates. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, did not come to destroy Jerusalem on a whim. The scripture says plainly in Daniel 1:2, "And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand." Read that again slowly. The Lord gave. This was not a military accident. This was a divine transaction. God himself handed the king into the hands of a pagan empire. That is either terrifying or it is the most comforting thing you will ever read, depending on where you are standing. Nebuchadnezzar was not merely a conqueror. He was a builder of civilizations. He took the best of every nation he conquered, the brightest minds, the sharpest students, and he brought them into Babylon to strengthen his empire. He wanted people who could think, who could serve, who could run a kingdom. And when he looked at the children of Judah, he saw exactly what he needed: young men of royal blood, educated, physically fit, mentally sharp, candidates for the court of the greatest empire in the world. Among those chosen were four young men. Their Hebrew names told you everything about who they were: Daniel, God is my judge; Hananiah, gift of the Lord; Mishael, he who is strong God; Azariah, help of the Lord. Every single name was a declaration of faith, a small theological statement carried around in every introduction. But Babylon had a plan for that too. And here is where the story takes a turn most people miss entirely. The first thing Babylon did was not put them in chains. It was not torture. It was not public humiliation. It was far more subtle and far more dangerous. They changed their names. Daniel became Belteshazzar, keeper of the hidden treasures of Bel, a Babylonian idol. Hananiah became Shadrach, inspiration of the sun god. Mishael became Meshach, of the goddess Shasha. Azariah became Abednego, servant of the shining fire. Do you see what is happening? Babylon was not trying to kill these young men. It was trying to erase them, one cultural layer at a time. This is the oldest tactic in the enemy's playbook. He rarely comes at you with brute force first. He comes with language, with environment, with new identities wrapped in prestige and privilege. He sits you down at a table full of beautiful things, and he says, eat. Eat, and everything you want can be yours. Babylon was not offering Daniel and his friends a prison cell. It was offering them a palace. The king appointed them the finest food from his own table, royal wine, 3 years of the best education the ancient world could offer. These were not captives in the sense we imagine. They were being cultivated, groomed for influence, and every day they stayed at that table. Every day they ate that food and drank that wine. They moved a little further from the God who had formed them. Have you ever been in a season where the temptation was not suffering, but comfort? Not chains, but a very beautiful cage? And here is what I want you to notice. The Bible does not record Daniel arguing theology with the Babylonians. It does not record him preaching at them. It does not record him weeping loudly about the fall of Jerusalem. What it records is this: a single quiet decision. Daniel 1:8 says, "But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank." One sentence, one man, one purpose, one moment that would change the trajectory of an entire empire. Now do not speed past this, because the food was not just food. The meat at a Babylonian king's table was first offered as a sacrifice to idols. The wine was poured out as a libation before false gods. To eat it was not a small cultural compromise. It was an act of worship, a bowing of the knee, dressed up as a dinner party. Daniel understood what was really on the table, And so he made a decision quietly, internally, before he ever opened his mouth. He purposed in his heart, before the conversation, before the negotiation, before anyone even asked. What is it in your life right now that requires that kind of predecision? Daniel did not rebel. He did not make a scene. He went to the prince of the eunuchs, the man responsible for their care, and he made a respectful, reasonable request. Try us for 10 days. Give us pulse, vegetables and legumes, and water. Then compare us to the others. That is it. No ultimatum, no dramatic speech. Just 10 days and a request for a fair test. And the officer was afraid, because the king himself had appointed their diet. To change it was to risk his own head. But Scripture says something remarkable in verse 9. Now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. Before Daniel said a word, God had already been working. The favor was already there. The relationship was already softened. This is the part most Christians miss when they are waiting on God in a hostile environment. You are not the first one to enter the room. God goes before you. He was in Babylon before Daniel arrived. He is in your workplace before you clock in. He is in that difficult relationship before you say a word. The officer agreed, 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, Daniel and his 3 friends appeared healthier, more nourished, more vibrant than every young man who had eaten from the king's table. The text says their countenances were fairer and fatter in flesh. In 10 days. That is not a natural result of a lentil diet in 10 days. That is a sign. That is God saying, I see what you did. And I am answering it with something that cannot be explained away. Obedience always produces something that cannot be explained by the obedience alone. Here is the deeper theological current running beneath this whole chapter. God was not punishing Israel by letting Babylon conquer Jerusalem. He was pruning. He was separating. He was reaching into the rubble of a broken nation and pulling out 4 young men who still had his name written on their hearts. Even when the empire was trying to write a new name over it, he does not waste the furnace. He finds the gold inside it. And I want you to sit with this for a moment. Daniel was probably 17 or 18 years old when this happened. He had just watched his city fall. He had been ripped from his family, his home, his language, his future. He had been renamed after a false god. He was surrounded by the most sophisticated civilization on earth, which was actively working to reshape his identity. And in the middle of all of that, he purposed in his heart, a teenager, in Babylon, alone. What is your excuse? And before we keep going, a quick word. These videos exist because people watch them, share them, and partner with us to keep them going. If this channel has been part of your walk with God, consider becoming a member. You keep this content free for someone in the world tonight who needs it and cannot afford anything else. We don't take that lightly. Thank you to our members already partnering with us. You are in every video. After the 3 years of training were complete, the king called them before him personally. Nebuchadnezzar, one of the most powerful men who had ever lived, sat down and examined these 4 young Hebrews himself. And the scripture says he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers in his entire kingdom. 10 times. In all matters of wisdom and understanding. Not just adequate, not just capable. 10 times better. There is a word here for anyone who has ever worried that faithfulness would cost them their career, their influence, their opportunity. Daniel did not end up in a dungeon for refusing the king's food. He ended up in the palace. The very thing the enemy used to try to compromise him became the platform God used to position him. Babylon thought it was using Daniel, but God was using Babylon. And Daniel 1:17 adds this. God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. God gave, not Babylon's curriculum, not Nebuchadnezzar's training program. God gave. They sat through the classes, yes. They learned the language, yes. But the understanding, the depth, the insight, the supernatural intelligence that would set them apart, that came from somewhere else entirely. This is the pattern throughout the entire book of Daniel. God takes what the empire thinks it owns and turns it into an instrument of his own glory. The training Babylon gave them became the very thing that put them in front of kings. The platform the enemy built for his own purposes became the stage on which God was glorified. Nothing the enemy invests in your destruction is wasted by God. He is that efficient. The chapter closes with one final note, almost a footnote, but loaded with meaning. Verse 21, "And Daniel continued even unto the first year of King Cyrus." That one line covers approximately 70 years. Daniel walked into Babylon as a teenager under Nebuchadnezzar, and he was still standing when Cyrus the Persian came to power, the very king who would eventually release the Jewish people from captivity. He outlasted the empire. He outlasted Babylon. One young man, one quiet decision about dinner, and 70 years of faithfulness later. He was still there when the doors finally opened. Faithfulness is not a sprint. It is not a highlight reel. It is 70 years of purposed hearts. It is 10 days that nobody saw, followed by decades of slow, faithful obedience in a land that never fully became home. Daniel never stopped being a foreigner in Babylon, but he never stopped being faithful in it either. And here is what God did with that. He made Daniel indispensable to every regime that tried to use him. Under Nebuchadnezzar, under Belshazzar, under Darius, under Cyrus, 4 empires, one faithful man. Because when you will not bow to the idol at the table, God will seat you at the table of kings. I want to speak directly to you for a moment, because this story is not just about ancient history in a foreign empire. This story is about every season where the world offers you something that looks like provision but functions like compromise. Every workplace where fitting in means dimming your faith. Every relationship where belonging means betraying your convictions. Every comfort that quietly asks you to forget who named you first. Babylon is not a place. Babylon is a system. It is the architecture of any culture that offers you the world in exchange for your worship. And it is sophisticated. It does not come with a sword first. It comes with a seat at a very impressive table. It renames you slowly, with language and promotion and belonging and privilege. And one day you look in the mirror and you cannot remember the Hebrew name anymore. Daniel's answer to Babylon was not isolation. He did not refuse to learn the language. He did not refuse the education. He did not burn Nebuchadnezzar's library. He engaged fully with the culture around him while maintaining a private, internal, non-negotiable line. He could sit in the classroom of Babylon without eating at its altar. There is a lesson here for every believer living in a world that is not their home. You can be present without being absorbed. You can be engaged without being compromised. And the secret weapon is not willpower. It is not personality. It is not even courage, though courage matters. The secret weapon is what Daniel 1:8 calls purposing in the heart, the decision made before the test arrives, the line drawn before the table is set. If you wait until you are sitting in front of the feast to decide whether you will eat, you will almost certainly eat. The purpose must be established in the quiet, before Babylon even opens the door. What is the feast in front of you right now? What is the beautiful, sophisticated, culturally approved thing that is asking you to offer just a small amount of worship in exchange for belonging? And have you purposed in your heart yet, before the door opens, before the table is set, what you will and will not do? The story of Daniel in Babylon is not just about a teenager with strong convictions. It is about a God who honors faithfulness in foreign places, who goes ahead of his people into every Babylon they are sent to, who gives favor before the conversation starts, who takes the empire's investment in your assimilation and converts it into the exact platform you need to glorify him. This is not just Daniel's story. This is the story of every believer who has ever felt out of place in the world they were sent to change. God did not rescue Daniel from Babylon. He revealed himself through Daniel in Babylon. That is a different kind of rescue, and it requires a different kind of faith, not faith that God will remove you from the hard place, faith that God is already at work in the hard place, and that your presence there, faithful, purposeful, uncompromised, is exactly part of the plan. And Daniel continued. That may be the most powerful verse in the whole chapter. He continued, through empires, through exile, through the naming and renaming of kings, he continued, And the God who was with him at the beginning of the story was with him at the end of it. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And he does not abandon the people who purpose their hearts toward him, not in Babylon, not in your city, not in whatever empire you woke up inside of this morning. So here's the question I want to leave you with. What has Babylon renamed you? What identity has the world placed on you? The title, the reputation, the version of yourself that gets you ahead in the empire. That is slowly replacing the name God gave you. Because God still knows your Hebrew name. He knew it before the empire got to you, and he is still calling you by it. And the second question, is there a table in your life right now that you have been sitting at for so long that you have forgotten it is an altar? Comfort can be a form of captivity. Belonging can be a form of exile. And the most dangerous Babylon is the one that never asks you to renounce your faith. It just quietly, beautifully over time, makes you forget it. Purpose in your heart, before the door opens, before the table is set. Daniel did. And 70 years later, he was still standing. If this story meant something to you today, share it with one person who needs to hear it. Someone in a Babylon season, someone who is being renamed by a culture that doesn't know their God-given name. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do that now. Because next week, we are going somewhere in Scripture that most people are afraid to go. Next time, we look at the night a king had a dream that no one in the world could interpret. A dream about empires rising and falling like dominoes across the centuries. A dream that Daniel said came not from any wisdom he possessed, but from a God in heaven who reveals secrets. That video drops your day. Don't miss it. Tell me in the comments. Are you more like Daniel, who purposed in his heart before the test came? Or more like someone still figuring out the line? I want to know where you are. No judgment, just honesty.